Okay, thanks for joining this session. I'm glad to see a packed room and a great lineup of speakers that will be sharing with us their practical examples. I think we will have the opportunity to, think about how to foster open innovation through living labs, and in the end, how to engage people, citizens, users, beneficiaries, stakeholders in the innovation processes, in public services innovation processes. I think all of them will have the opportunity in a very short time to explain their examples. And I think it will be an opportunity to think about how to make people be part of the smart city conversation and the smart city implementation process. That's my introduction. I don't want to take too much time from your time. I just want to remember you that you have the section, this Ask and Vote section of the official app of the Congress. If you want to raise your questions at the end of the session, you will also have the opportunity to make your questions from the floor. And that's it. I think we will enjoy your experience and your background. Let me just introduce very briefly the five of them. We will have Jeff Merritt, the Director of Innovation from the City of New York. We will also have the experience from the Ministry of Economy, Competitiveness and Innovation of Andorra. We will have from Sweden the Maria Dahl, the Director of Open Arena Urban Development of the Johannesburg Science Park. And quite related, but from the other part of the world, from Brazil, we will have Professor Rejan Relva from the Faculty of Engineering in Sorocaba, near São Paulo. And we will also have the opportunity to learn from Sapansha, in charge of driving MasterCard's activities on smart cities from MasterCard. That's all I want to say, and just let's get started. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Merritt. I'm the Director of Innovation for New York City. I think you guys are in for a treat here. This is a really outstanding panel, and I think everybody has something very unique to contribute to this discussion. If you've heard me talk before, you realize that I talk a lot about equity. I talk about a smart city as an equitable city. This discussion will be no different. However, we will be talking about how do we bring equity into living labs, and how do we build a living lab that truly embodies equity and helps transform cities. So I think our starting point here is that we have to recognize that I think all of us agree that smart cities is about making people's lives better. And that's why living labs make so much sense, that it's an environment in which we can see if these technologies are actually making a real impact on people's lives. But whose lives are we actually improving, right? In a city like New York, we have tremendous, tremendous opportunity and prosperity. We have more millionaires than anywhere else in the world, right? This is amazing, almost 400,000 millionaires. But we also have almost half of our city who is living at or near the poverty level. So when we think, there's an expression out there that a rising tide raises all boats. But when we're talking about technology, is it really raising all boats equally? And how can we make sure that we are building and testing and rolling out our technology in a way that is truly equitable and really making a difference? If we look at some of the really amazing things happening around the world in smart cities, a lot of them are happening in greenfield developments. This is on the west side of Manhattan, an area called Hudson Yards, being engineered from the bottom up, instrumented with the latest gizmos and gadgets. It is amazing. But this is where the top 1% of New Yorkers will live, right? And so what about that other 99%? And by building these beautiful cities, these idyllic places where technology makes lives better, what does that mean about the rest of New Yorkers? They are actually falling further behind. And in some neighborhoods, actually, they are pushing away against technology, right? That if we think about the role of government here, I think it's very important that we recognize that the market will naturally move where the money is. And that our role in government, if we're truly going to take advantage of this transformational power of technology, that we need to focus on these communities not only where the needs are the greatest, but also in some ways where the resistance might be greatest. So when we were deciding where we were going to put our first living lab, it was in some ways a no-brainer. It wasn't going to be in Midtown Manhattan. Instead, we chose a neighborhood where you have more public housing than anywhere in North America, where poverty levels, crime levels are through the roof. If you're born in Brownsville, Brooklyn, your life expectancy is 11 years less than if you're born in Lower Manhattan, right? This is just a few subway rides away, but dramatic differences in lives. And when we think about how technology fits into that, this is an area where, in many ways, technology has been used against the community rather than to help empower individuals. That if you read in the paper about technology in Brownsville, you find cases of technology being used to target individuals who might be in gangs. You read about surveillance. And so when you think about why is that community actually pushing back against technology, you see that it's because of a history of abuses of power by corporations, by government, right? And so there is fear there. And so if we are going to truly make change here, those are the communities that we have to focus on. And a lot of times when you see living labs out there, you'll see them just go and put a bunch of technology in a community. And it's important that we recognize that whereas that may provide additive value, that is in fact not changing the equation here. That if we are going to change the equation, we actually have to rethink the entire development cycle of technology and bake in equity and bake in trust early on. So if you look at the way that we think about smart cities in New York, and this is sort of a diagram of what I call our smart city stack, and it has sort of a strategy layer, the big blueprints, it has a tactical policy layer there, which are our guidelines for how we roll out technology. There's a focus on how do we identify vendors and research projects, and then there's testing that occurs and validation, then you move up to an actual deployment and data integration, and at the end you're at the application layer, which is how we experience technology. When we're thinking about where do we insert this community engagement, it is a no-brainer. It happens there at that intersection, at that point when we move from ideas into action. And this is something that cities of all kinds, the smartest cities out there, sadly are not good at this. I take an example like LED lights. It seems like a no-brainer. Every city around the world is saying, yes, we should roll out LED lights. But we do it in a way that results in headlines like this, right? You're rolling out LED lights, we're saving energy, but the residents hate them, right? And not surprisingly, then what are we doing a couple months later? We're going and we're changing them because they're too bright. And we're putting in dimmers, right? We're making it so they can be adjusted. And why did we have to do that? We had to do that because we weren't smart enough as cities to realize that community engagement, even though it takes time and energy and is hard, has to occur. And that there are insights that we gain there that are invaluable. That if we do testing, if we do validation and engagement right, if we invest the time and energy up front, it actually accelerates our work. Right? It actually speeds things up. It seems like it won't, but if we can streamline that process through our living labs, it will actually mitigate risks. It will actually lead to greater trust, greater partnerships that make this work more sustainable. Our living lab philosophy in New York is looking at the intersection, and this is really important, of three different areas. One, what are the community needs? Two, what are the city priorities and what are the investments that are planned? Where are their capital dollars that we're going to spend, right? We are committed, we are going to spend money. And then what are the solutions that are out there on the market? And where those three things come together, that is the sweet spot for living labs. Because if there's a community need, but there's not a technology to address it, if there's a community need, but there's not money to actually put into that, it all fails. And so we look for the sweet spot where these come together. This is sort of a quick snapshot of the components here. It involves community advisory boards. It involves intensive learning sessions, priority settings with community, baselining the community, doing open challenges, demonstrating technology, getting feedback. But if we can standardize this process, if we can streamline this and make it so that every technology, before it gets rolled out, goes through a very systematic process, we, as I said before, can dramatically accelerate and advance the way in which we do this. It looks like this. It's a lot of hard work. It's not sexy, but the results can be enormous. And right now, you see the sort of impact of this. We have 2 challenges that are open right now where we're actively seeking companies, academic institutions, individuals to apply to focus on this neighborhood in Brownsville on 2 specific areas, on how do we push forward our goals towards zero waste, specifically in shared spaces like public housing, and also how do we activate spaces at night? How do we take communities that are otherwise vacant, where no one goes out after dark, activate those using technology to create vibrant civic life, to create vibrant economic opportunity? Thank you.
To enter. Okay.
Well, thank you. Well, as a Minister of Economy, it will not surprise you if the explanation why we chose to make a bet for open innovation and for living labs was competitiveness. It's a different approach. It's not only satisfying needs, it's also how do I make my country more competitive by implementing open innovation and living labs. We have some assets. Normally when you come from Andorra, you don't have to talk to you what living labs are. You know about it, but I have to explain what Andorra is. It's a very small country, not far from here, from Barcelona, and we have some very specific assets that we have to leverage. We are very stable. We are ranking number 8 in institutional stability and absence of violence, no homicides in the last 5 years. High quality of life, number 4 in access and quality of health by the Lancet in 2017. An open and developed economy, we're ranking 23 in terms of GDP per capita worldwide. Sound public finances, we have a public debt at 40% ratio of debt over GDP. We are a services-oriented economy, and this is very important. 50% of our GDP is depending on tourism and financial sector, and those are very exposed to innovation. And we have a very strong positioning in tourism. We have 8 million visitors a year for 80,000 inhabitants. So we have the highest rate of tourists per inhabitant in the world. We're ranking number 1. And this is the retail sector is only 15% of the GDP. The hotel sector is 8% of the GDP. The whole touristic sector is 40% of the GDP. So in order to be competitive, we took the bet to make a bet for innovation and how to leverage those assets by having access to the markets. We're currently negotiating an agreement with the EU, so all the work that we have done is compliant in terms of data with the EU directives. And how do we empower energetic and digital transition through innovation, and why open innovation? We have chosen to try to convert Andorra in a living lab, in a true lab where you can test your solutions specifically on tourism. And we have launched that in 2012. We launched a cluster of innovation at that time where we worked on a strategic plan. We also launched a collaboration 2 years after with the MIT Media Lab, which is our partner in developing solutions and methodologies of living lab. And we chose to bet for innovation not on an inventing mode. We're not going to invent anything in Andorra, but we have the capability to be good at implementing and integrating solutions. And this is the bet that we have done as a country. So everything is based on projects. The idea is to combine the idea of building blocks to develop small projects, short-term projects that solve problems that we have in the day-to-day life, so the perception of our inhabitants are more immediate, but at the same time, without not losing the grasp that we have a major ambition, that all those projects help us in building an ecosystem which is friendly to improve the competitiveness of the sectors that today make our prosperity, preferably the touristic sector. I'm going to show you some examples. We have chosen, in fact, three main issues that we want to address with this open innovation scope. The first one is mobility. 50% of the CO2 emissions are caused by transport. We're having 4.5 million vehicles coming every year in Andorra. The number of our vehicles is 80,000. We have the highest rate of vehicles per inhabitant in the world, together with San Marino, 1.2 vehicles per person. So if we have to address energetic transition issues and pollution issues, is by acting on those agents, which are the tourists. So mobility is very important for us. That is why we have launched an ambitious project for an integrated multimodal transport platform, which is going to be implemented from the next year. And that's why we are at the same time promoting subventions, subsidies, programs for enhancing the penetration of electric vehicles. We are succeeding in selling more than 5% of electric vehicles in the last 2 years, which put us in number 3 worldwide. So the effort of combining energetic transition initiatives with digital transition initiatives is very important for us. And mobility has to be seen, in our case, not only as mobility as a service, like it's done in many countries, but mobility as a competitive asset. How can I change the behaviors and the sustainability of my touristic model by enhancing the mobility of our visitors? How can I offer more individualistic ways of experiencing through autonomous driving? We're very interested, and we're working some solutions with the MIT in terms of how do I implement autonomous driving, how do I equip my infrastructure to adapt to the new possibilities that this kind of driving devices can change the way that people live the tourism. There are two other projects who are intrinsically and very closely linked to this. Retail sector, loyalty programs. How do I get the customers to come to Andorra? And how do I enhance their experience, and how do I enhance their consumption once they are in Andorra? So loyalty project is the second most important project that we have in mind. And the third one is payment systems. How do I integrate everything that is related to payment in our country? So once you have mobility of the citizens and visitors, once you have how they spend the day there by offering all the leisure and shopping activities that we can provide, and once we solve the issue of how they pay and how we have the transactions resulting from all these activities, we have an ecosystem which can bring us a good solution of the holistic and a holistic approach. And everything related to a big data project. So what we launched with the MIT 2 years ago is how do I build a big data specialized on tourism. The idea of those three projects, mobility, payment, and retail, is to gather more information, more data, in order to be able to explain the patterns, to describe them, to diagnose them, but also to predict and to prescribe them, which is the most important part. And this is what we're doing with the MIT, and I'm going to show you two examples on a video. The first one is the city scope. All the data that we gather with Andorra Telecom and the energy company, which are associated to the initiative, is built on this platform. So we have created an innovation space where physically people can meet. We have researchers working there from the Observatory of Sustainability of Andorra, for example. We have the MIT working with us, but we have also the public institutions and the private institutions that can gather around this map, where we can project different layers of information. So we have the mobility layers. This is the construction of the open space in one of the touristic facilities. So you have energy, traffic, the impact of touristic events on the territory, how people are moving, how people are spending their time, probably spending their money once we finalize the payment system integration. So this is the whole idea, open innovation by bringing people together and solving problems that we have. And the second example is how we associate digital transition to energetic transition. This is a work done by the OPSA, the Observatory of Sustainability of Andorra, which are a group of researchers working in the innovation space. We have an inventory of all the roofs of Andorra to produce solar photovoltaic energy. So every roof has calculated the investment necessary, the potential return for energy production, production and the time of return of the investment. So in order that to gather people and to see the possibilities that they can have to contribute in changing the habits and promoting Andorra from going from 16% of production of self-production to 30% in self-production by 2030. So thank you very much.
Good day, everybody. I'm Maria Ådahl, and I'm an architect and work for Johanneberg Science Park. Which one? No? Yes. So I'm director of our Open Arena Urban Development, and we are... Isn't it working? This one? No. In Sweden, science parks are a rather common construction to work with innovation, and we have around 80, and in Gothenburg we have 6. We have 3 in Gothenburg, and in the West Sweden we have 6. And we have a focus on sustainable urban development, energy and material. And we have around 20 innovation projects and living labs, and running them together with partners. We are owned by the City of Gothenburg and the University of Chalmers, and we have companies that we work actively with to develop projects together with them around their focus areas and their challenges and goals. And we are also funded from the European Union, Interreg and Horizon 2020, and also the Innovation Authority of Sweden, Vinnova, and the region of Västra Götaland. We use Gothenburg as a test arena, and Gothenburg has a goal to be innovative and sustainable and also open to the world. And I want to inform you that Gothenburg now has been a lighthouse city, one of 3 cities, and Utrecht is the leading city, and also Nice is part of this, and 3 follower cities, and in total there are 9 countries and 43 partners, and it's going to run for 5 years. And HSB Living Lab, which I'm going to inform you about, is one of the projects included in this big Horizon 2020 Lighthouse project. So the challenges we're working within the Living Lab of HSB, one of our partners, is to speed up the pace for sustainability, and how we focus on how we can make living more sustainable and how we can solve housing shortage, and also make use of spaces that are not planned yet. We are 3 main partners in this project. It's Chalmers, and it's HSB, and also Johanneberg Science Park. And Chalmers had a big program, Homes for Tomorrow, and HSB has always been a proactive partner, a building company in Sweden, and we connect them. And together we started the Living Lab, and now we are many more partners, companies that have every of the partners has each goal to work with in the Living Lab. And the residents, it's a 3rd generation Living Lab, and the residents are really important to develop the Living Lab. So it's we focus to be an open arena, and it's also open for partners with outside the Living Lab. It's based on 4 pillars. It's the building. It's a temporary building, and it was built in 10 days, and it's going to stand on the campus for 10 years. It's co-creation with the companies and with the students that is living in the Living Lab, and also together with partners outside. And it's the research. There are around 2,000 sensors in the Living Lab that is measuring everything that is happening there, about using resources, water, energy, and consumption, and movements. So the students are really important. And here are some examples of the apartments. There are some apartments that is more designed as a function apartment. It's more cubic, and some that is more traditional, so that you compare these apartments with each other. And there is an online portal where you can go and see all the ongoing projects and activities, and where you also can apply with a project ID, but you need to have one of the partners as a partner in your project ID. But you can follow it. And here's one example of a project. It's about sharing, and it's comes from an idea from the students from the beginning. So they have a room where they change their things with each other. And there's also a project about a laundry studio. Washing studios are normally very boring. They are down in the basement, but here you can, they have like collaborated together with Rice University and find a design that is more attractive so that it will be more funny to wash your clothes. So actually it's in the entrance of the HSP Living Lab, so even when we have study visit, people will meet the students there washing their clothes. And right now we have a challenge about shared spaces in general, but we will test it in the Living Lab. So this is an open competition where you can come with ideas about how to use the spaces in buildings where are the shared spaces. And we are now going to develop a Living Lab network about open data. It's called SCORE, and we will lead a work package about the Living Labs. So this we'll take the things that we have learned from developing the HSP Living Lab to this SCORE project. So we use the city as a test arena. We develop Living Labs and we scale them up internationally and help the cities to be smarter. So I've given you some example of smart cities project that we have Living Labs that are connected to. It's the SCORE project, Interreg. It's the IRIS project, Horizon 2020, which Utrecht is leading. And it's the Climate Kick Network, Smart Sustainable District, with a lot of cities around Europe that are connected to this. And we also have a project that is funded by European Urban Innovation Action, European project, that is called Fossil Free Energy District. And it's also based on the campus. It's a microgrid project on the campus. And you can follow all of these projects on web pages and Twitter and LinkedIn. So we work with the challenges, and the key is to find active partners that are engaged and want to put in time and also funding. And the science park can be a key to connect different actors. And it's also good if you take bigger steps. Don't be too too shy, just because we need to hurry up to change the global to be more sustainable. So, and also find international projects that you can connect with. And for example, we have the IRIS, the SCORE, and the Climate Kick and Urban Innovative Action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria.
Good afternoon. I'm Professor Regiane from FACENS, Faculdade de Engenharia de Sorocaba. FACENS is 41 years old. It's a very nice school, and all of you are invited to go there. Our mission is to create and to educate happy entrepreneurs and innovators students. So we wanted to change the way that we teach. We have for this 6 labs that students can play with. We have Innovation and Social Lab. We have FACENS Entrepreneurship Center. We have Liga, it's a living lab of games, LINS, and I take care of Smart Campus FACENS. Smart Campus Facens, it's a living lab that the students can come and can test all solutions for smart cities. It was created with the help with MIT 3 years ago, and our vision is to use and to implement all the 17 ONU's objectives. And for this, we have 8 axes. We have, for example, mobility and security, we have education and culture, we have urbanization, industry and business, ICT, energy, environment, and we take care of all of this with our governance aids. So I'm going to show you some projects. This one, for example, we are looking for how to build new homes for people that there is no conditions and how we can help them to live better with ICT also. We have Fab Labs, so the students can come, can test, can develop all the project, and we can give to them some money and some help to do this. We have also an intelligent robot center, and we want to implement with, for example, vision and help them to create new solutions for this new technology like ICT. We have smart security. We put cameras in all the campus. We can count people, we can trace and track, and we can take care of the security. We, of course, are worried with the CO2, so we implemented the carpool inside the university, and we are helping the students to go by bicycle, by carpool, and another kind of ways. We have also an Industry 4.0 lab. We are implementing with some companies like Festo, ABB, and so on. We invite the students to create their own machines. This kind of machine, it was invented and manufactured by the students with the help of the professors. It was very nice. The students became very happy to do this kind of things. And we wanted to send this to help people outside Facens, for example, inside the schools. And the students create many kind of machines. They are learning how to build and how to help people. We have also a photovoltaic panel. We are focused on implement some kind of new technology for energy. We have this technology on our roof, and we have 16% of our energy come from this, that it's on grid. But we have also a photovoltaic panel with the tracker, so they can position where the sun is in that moment. And we have a photovoltaic lab, so the students can learn, can practice, and can come to the community and can help to implement photovoltaic systems inside the community. We are changing everything inside the university, so we put lights, LED lights, and we change all the lights inside and outside. Because of this, of course, we have some economy. Outside, we can have, for example, 6-7% of economy, but we changed everything inside. So now we have a commission that take care of this project to take care of our water and of our energy. We have some results in 6 months. We have many economy. For example, in Building B and Building E, we have 83% of economy inside our classrooms. We have implemented wind power, but in Sorocaba there is no wind, so the students are invited to do to have some energy, but we are trying to implement and trying to help them to understand that it's a very important energy way. And we have also a green roof. this student put in 3 kinds of green roof, and he wants to understand which plant is better for the house. It's a very nice project, and we are going to bring this outside to Brazil. We are worried, of course, with the other kind of waste. So we have electronic waste, we have cigar waste. I hate, but anyway, we needed to do something with this. And we have a water bill, and the students developed this kind of solution, and we are planning to put this in our river in Brazil because we need this a lot. We have all water treatment station, and the students can build, and can use this on their homes. Everything is controlled nowadays. We have smart water integrated with our float island to control the water quality. And with this plant, we could get better our quality. And we also take care of our composting. So everybody gets the plants, and then we transform this as food for our food. And we put some sensors inside our vegetable garden to know if it will rain or not. We have always put our saving droplets, and we are saving water with this also. The students can learn and can build also. We have our lab, and this innovation lab, social innovation lab, we have engineer for goods. We have some students here that are from this lab. It's very nice because they put engineering to help people. We created many equipment to help people that are disability. It's a wonderful project. We have also the engineer for good to help companies to become better. So we put our chemistry students, all the students, to help them. We have intergeneration. I love this project. Your grandmother can go to the university and can learn with his grandfather, and we can change everything inside the university. We have our smart car, Facens, and we are implementing some technology. All of these are integrated with our smart control, so we have many data, we have some graphics, and our students can now take all the data and put this in our big data to understand better how the university works and how we can get the data outside the university and put this in our cities. We have some partnerships for this, of course, and now we received 4 awards. One, it was the top educational last year. The other one, it was automation, and Enel put some money to help us to change, and this year we were very happy because we received Smart City UK London as the better project about education around the world. So the students, if they have an idea, they can come to Smart Campus. We give them some ways to help them, and if they want to put in the market, they can go to our entrepreneurship, and we help them to create their startup and to become an innovator. So thank you a lot. Thanks for the opportunity, and to be better, just miss you. See you there. Bye.
Hello, my name is Sapan. I work for MasterCard. I lead our Smart Cities vertical within the organization. What I want to talk to you about today is, given the topic around innovation and living lags, is a very specific example of the work we have done in Chicago recently around transit demand management. But before I talk about that, I want to put that in context of some of the broader work we do in the city space. And if I reflect on that, there are 4 broad components on how we think about this. The first one is, and as Jeff said, right, this might resonate with you. The first one is around inclusion. If you think about people moving from villages and small towns into cities, we need to find a way to make the growth of cities more equitable. We need to include citizens in how they're able to access services and the services that a city provides to the citizens. There's a lot of work we do in that space, primarily around financial inclusion. How do we provide identity and access to these citizens? We have commitment to include 500 million people by 2020 into the formal economy. So that's the first category. If I move clockwise, the second category is around how do we use technology to drive scale in cities around the world. And when I say technology, that's not just technology, that's technology which operates on interoperable open standards. So what do I mean by that? To give you an example, so if a lot of the work we do in that space is in the transit environment. If you think about how transit systems operate around the world, you typically, if you think about New York, right? You go into New York, what you typically do is you exchange your money for transit money. You take your money, put it in a vending machine, you get a Metro card in the example of New York, and that is what you use to travel around the transit system. And there are 300 of these proprietary systems that exist around the world to operate and to consume transit services. But the way I think about it, it's very different, right? So if you go to a coffee shop and you say, I want a coffee, Starbucks doesn't ask you to buy a Starbucks card and only then I'm going to provide you coffee, right? So why should transit be different? All of this should operate in an interoperable way. So what we have started doing is, and we have done this in 100+ cities now, wherein you can use what you have in your wallet, you take out a card and you can commute through the transit network without queuing up to buy separate ticking systems, without the city investing a lot of their resources into vending machines and people sitting behind booths giving out these proprietary ticketing cards. It helps visitors. It makes the city more visitor-friendly. So when we implemented this in London, to give you an example, if you traveled into Heathrow and you looked at the queues in front of the tube stations there, you will see hundreds of people queuing up trying to get an Oyster card. Now, if you contrast that to today, you won't find people queuing up. People don't prefer to take taxis. They just pull out what they have in their wallets and they run through the transit system. So that's what I mean by interoperable standards based on open APIs. A lot of focus there. The third one is around data. We spoke about the data. As CEO says, data is the new oil. I can't overemphasize that. But given we operate a global network, we see payment transactions. We can help the city make better planning decisions. We can help them understand what kind of tourists come into the city, what do they do when they get into the city, how do you make city more attractive for tourists, but also from a policy making perspective, right? So if I have made a specific action or a policy action in the city, how do I measure the impact of that action? What impact that particular policy had in terms of driving the economic health of the city? We can help cities measure that. So that's the third bucket. And the fourth bucket is what I'm going to talk about, wherein we try and work with cities in a collaborative manner where we can come in with them and co-design and co-pilot solutions together with them. So the specific example I'm going to talk about here is around congestion. So if for those of you who live in the cities, this would resonate with you, right? Congestion plays a huge part in driving how people think about driving quality of life. If I get into my office and if it takes me 1 hour rather than 30 minutes, I feel grumpy through the day. So it really drives some of the quality of life, essentially. And what's driving some of this congestion is the fact that if you look at public spending on transit, that hasn't changed for a lot of cities. In the US example, still cities spend like 2.5% of their budget on things like transit. But if you look at the ridership, that's grown manifold, right? In the example of New York, that's gone up like by 80% since over the last 20, 25 years. And that's an issue. And if you think about how do we solve it, one solution is to invest more, build more rail lines, put in more trains, but that is expensive. It takes time, and you don't need to solve for the peak of peaks. In some cities, what they try and solve for is my peak hours are in the morning when I go from my home to work between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and then again in the evening when people are coming back home from between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock. So that's what I try and, that's what the kind of infrastructure I need to build so that I can accommodate that demand. But in sometimes what happens is your demand goes through the roof, and you have an event or you have a breakdown, and in that case, it's very difficult to meet the demand. So what we are trying to see is, what we wanted to test is, can we change the demand? Can we optimize that so that we can smoothen out the peaks and the valleys? And how do we do that in a manner that we can reach out to the commuters in a more real-time manner and talk to them through a medium that they can easily relate to. So what we did in Chicago, we worked with a number of organizations, firstly with CTA, which is Chicago Transit Authority, and the City of Chicago, but also with City Digital, which is an urban tech platform which helps bring together private and public partners and helping us use Chicago as a test bed for that. We also worked with Ideas 42, which is a team of behavioral scientists who can help design experiments, but also measure the effectiveness of those experiments, along with SCEWC17, which is a mobile engagement company that we partner with. And specifically for Chicago, if you think about Chicago is big on baseball. If you don't know what baseball is, it's the American version of cricket. That's what I call it. And with Chicago, the specific problem is the stadium that hosts the local games, Cubs, is on the northern part of the city, and the games happen at 7 o'clock in the evening, which coincides with when people are moving from downtown to where they live in the north part of the city. And if we had to change that behavior, we had to find a way to connect the riders with the city so that the city can make them aware that there's a game on and you need to do something about it. And but also be more specific in how we target them, right? You can't do mass targeting because this may not be relevant to a lot of riders on the city. And then test how do we change that behavior? How do we make people not travel at the same time between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock, but do that over different periods of time? And this is a matter of habit, right? So if I think about the way I work, it's become a habit that I need to leave home at 8 and I need to leave office at 6. I don't necessarily need to do that. I am flexible around that. There may be other people who are not flexible. If I'm a working mother and I need to pick up my kid from the nursery at 6 o'clock, there's no way you can do anything to make me change my behavior. So you need to find segments that are open to doing that. So that is what we did. We ran a campaign for a week or so to sign up volunteers for the trial, wherein and this was specific to one particular line on the transit system, and the focus was on trying to shift that behavior. And we did that through SMS, and which is the most basic form of how a city can communicate. If you look at how SMSs, 90% of SMSs are opened in the first 3 minutes. It's the lowest common denominator of how people can read. So everybody may not have a smartphone, but everybody can receive SMSs even if you have a feature phone. Right? And we tested out 4 things. One was just testing the commuter that there's a game on tonight. You might need to be aware of that, and there may be overcrowding. The second one was around telling them there's a game on tonight, it's better off you don't travel at that specific time and choose a different time to travel. The third one was around, we said, if you don't travel between 5 and 6, we are going to do a donation on your behalf to a charity. And the fourth one was we offered rebates on their tickets, on their transit tickets. So unsurprisingly, what wins is money. People like money in the pocket. And what we were able to see is it drives 18% reduction. We drove 18% reduction in peak transit ridership. So if you compare that when we had no tax to when we provided fare rebates, we were able to, from the trial, take out 18% from the peaks. So what this tells me, right, if I just try and summarize, what this tells me is, and if I just reflect back on the way we work with cities, it's more about focusing on solving for the problem, right? The focus can't be on selling a product. If we focus on solving a problem, and if we can focus on working with the city in a manner which is where the city is a part of the solution-making process. We can co-design, co-develop, and then pilot that solution in the city, and then take that elsewhere. That is what we have found to work, and that's the vision. We are calling that vision City Possible, wherein we want to work with corporates, a large set of global corporate partners, as well as cities, to go through that process, identify the challenges that they face, and then work together to solve for them. Thank you.
So thank you all of you for being so precise about the timing you had. I think one of the particularities of this session is that we've learned from projects with very different scopes. I mean, we've seen the experience of a country, and we've seen the implementation of the concept of living labs in buildings, in washing rooms. It can also be implemented for very specific public sector issues, but also can be used in a neighborhood scale. So we wonder why it's so I would say why it is so easy to use this kind of concept or approach to so many different scopes and cases. I mean, you mentioned maybe it's not sexy, the everyday life of running a living lab or something similar, but in the end it seems that it's something, maybe it's a hype, maybe it's something that everyone wants to have in their city, in their company. So I would ask you just, your reflection about why it is so attractive. Maybe it's so obvious because we want to engage stakeholders or other actors, but maybe we have to go beyond and find the right goal of a living lab approach for opening up innovation.
So I'll speak to why I think there's a natural fit between smart cities and living labs. This event is not called Smart Technologies, right? It's called the Smart City Expo, because at the end of the day, it is about transforming lives. There's a social element that we are all trying to change here. And so that interaction between individuals and technology is what living labs are about, and that exists whether you're talking about a university, whether you're talking about a science park, a country, any of these different environments. That's why I think it is universal, that it is defined by the relationship between people, the human behavior, the way in which we use technology, the way in which we go about our lives.
The technologies certainly bring tools. And what we're doing here is using tools differently in different scopes. So the idea is, what do you want to do with these tools? In our case, it was how do I compete in a globalized world being so small? So by competing by being unique. So it's very, Michael Porter says, you don't have to compete to be the best. You have to compete to be unique. So what do you have that makes you unique today? Everybody has a unique way of teaching, a unique way of bringing tourism, everybody has own assets. So how are the tools that you can use are going to bring you leverage to these assets? Mobility, everybody is doing mobility solutions to the cities. But do you want to have mobility as a competitive asset? So you have to use the tool differently, and you have to gather agents differently around the table. And this is the funny thing about innovation space and living lab. You can bring people together by sharing information and data, which is the key to all of it. But you can certainly apply differently tools. So it depends on your ambition, and it depends on the vision that you give to it.
Another answer?
I believe it's a simple way to involve people, to make it they connected to a living lab, and it also gives possibilities to make mistakes before you're putting them into a real environment.
So I will echo all of that. I think about this in a very simple terms, right? It's we're trying to solve problems. Technology helps us. It's an enabler, but that can't be the story, right? The story can't be about technology. It's about how do we use technology to solve real problems, and that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. We have some questions from the app. I think there was one I mean, I lost the I lost the app. But I think there was one for Japan on how do you actually control the people you want to send them an SMS. And I think there was one for you. Yeah, Japan, if you want to answer that question,
how do we
which is
control
quite
SMS?
practical.
So this was a very specific trial, right? We signed up people who were traveling on, so it was this was a real problem, right? So if you look through the poster and the campaigns that we ran, it was around, if you want to know more about how the GUPS games can impact you, then sign up for this service. So it was a very specific call to action, and people who were impacted by that would sign up for us for a service like that. And the information we were providing, we tested, as I said, we tested out a number of different ways through which we can test what clicks versus not. Actually, all of the methods clicked. What clicked most was money, but essentially all the different mechanisms clicked. If you think about, if I'm in my office and it's 6 o'clock, it's about time for me to go home, and I get a message which says, Sapan, if you hang around for half an hour, the congestion is going to go down. It's a more pleasant time to go home. I would sign up for that, right? But if I actually make the effort to go out of my office and I see congestion on the tube station, on the train station, then people want to hang around and they just want to see if I probably might get in, and that adds to the dwell time, that adds to the congestion. So that's what we were trying to solve for, right? Proactively intervene so that we can change behavior.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there are two more general questions for the five of you. One is about scale. How do you deliver scale to successful innovation tested in living labs? How to make them bigger and go to a further stage? And also, how do you successfully identify and measure the benefit of living lab innovation? How are you measuring the kind of success you're trying to get?
I'll speak first to that question of scale, because this is very important, that you have to design for scale. You can't go into sort of a living lab situation just to test something. You have to have a vision for, if that test is successful, then what? And so when we think about constructing a specific challenge, which is really just, about the starting of that process to identify solutions, one, we want to make sure that is tied to a long-term sort of vision for the city. So in our case, we have something called a Plan for One NYC that sets out our goals for the city and that are maybe 5, 10, 15 years down the road. So in order to scale, it has to be tied towards a goal that is long-term and that where you want to see something expand across the city. And then second, it has to be tied to dollars. Most cities have capital planning budgets that, again, are developed 5, 10 years in advance. And so in a case like Brownsville, there is $1 billion that will be invested into that community in capital dollars, meaning infrastructure changes in the coming years. And so we know we will be buying things, and there are capital expenditures across the city. So looking for that sweet spot where you know that it's tied to a big picture goal and it's tied to money. If you plan in advance for that, then you sort of set the path or the road for scaling.
I totally agree with that. Again, I think part of the problem is I don't necessarily like the word lab. I think when we talk about a lab, it conveys the sense is we are doing things in small scale and it may not go anywhere, right? But that is, we need to solve that at the design phase. We need to design questions or experiments that we are trying to answer so that once we have found an answer, we can scale it. So we are not doing this for like the 2,000 people we signed up, right? We tested what we wanted to prove. We have proven that out, but the goal is to expand this within the city and then take this to other cities. If we are only doing this for the trial period, then it makes no sense for anybody, neither for the city nor for us.
Yeah, one of the issues is how do you think big, act small, and scale it? This is the thing. You have to act small. You have to have concrete projects that solve concrete questions and issues that you have, because this is the way that the people have the perception that you're advancing. Otherwise, you lose your time trying to explain the whole project. But you don't have to lose the grasp that every one of those bricks, of those building blocks, has an ambition and a vision over there. And everything has to be integrated. The real difficult thing is not finding solutions to specific problems, it's how you have a holistic approach and how do you integrate the different phases of development. And this is the real question. So the scale, it's going to come after, but you have to have an embedded vision of bringing small projects that are thought on a more holistic approach. And the second, it's a question of measure. You have to measure problems, you have to measure success, and the only way to be able to succeed is to prove that the measures that you have in providing photovoltaic energy today are different than 10 years ago, and that the average spending of the consumers that come in Andorra has changed through the years, and that the average time they spend on the road is changed through the years. So it's a matter of data, and this is key. And from our experience, it's been very critical to involve the two most powerful data generators in Andorra, which was a telecom company and the energy company. Mm-hmm. And that has been key. They are participating financially. We created a foundation, and they are involved both as a team, as engineers, but also economically and financially, and this is very important. You have to have these leverages and to involve the private sector also in those initiatives. Mm-hmm.
I want to say something quickly on the metrics that Maria hit. This is really difficult to do metrics for living labs, because one of the things that we're trying to do here is test solutions, and therefore failure is actually a sign of sort of strength. So for me in New York, one of the key things is that I'm trying to accelerate the speed at which we evolve when we're looking at technology. So the time from that sort of problem identification and the ideation to the actual validation of a solution and going to scale, and shortening that timeline is really important. And so it's not about the number of times we fail, it's how long does it take us to succeed.
Any other thoughts? No? It's fine. So we're running out of time. I want to give the opportunity if there's anyone who wants to make an analog question by voice. And if not, we have just there's one. I think you can stand up and go to the mic.
Hello. Hi, my name is Nick. I work for E.ON Sustainable Cities. I have a question for you, Jeff. First of all, thank you for a great presentation. I'm a little bit intrigued about the picture you showed about with the 3 circles and the sweet spot in the center of it. What do you say? What are the main challenges reaching the sweet spot and the critical success factors?
Sure. So I think I'm going to speak not to the challenges, but just how you do that. One, you want to bring all of the key stakeholders to the table. So the community engagement is key, that it is critical that you have access to a network of key decision makers in the community, the folks that are actively involved in sort of advocacy groups, whether it be around safety, around housing, around any of a myriad of issues. That you've got to have the right people that come to the table on the community side. You need to have the right folks on the city side who actually understand budgets and know what's committed, but also have the understanding of sort of what's practical. And then last, you need the private sector at the table. If you can bring the right partners to the table, it's not actually that difficult to identify that sweet spot. But it is a collaborative process, and it takes time. In the case of those challenges that I mentioned, we started that process in March of this year. We went through basically about 3 months working with the community and our stakeholders at government agencies to understand that sort of intersection there, and then did sort of market analysis to see where sort of we knew that there were smart city solutions that could be a fit, and then we launched those challenges just about a month ago. So it's something you can do in a period of about 6 months, and then what we'll do is we'll roll out a bunch of pilots next year. We hopefully will test, take those things to scale, and we'll keep repeating this cycle again and again.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm afraid we ran out of time. There were 2 or 3 more questions on the app. I couldn't have the time to raise them, but of course you can talk to them just after the session. Thank you very much for your time attending this session, and of course thank you very much for coming to Barcelona, joining the session, your preparation, and for sharing your insights. Thank you very much, and a big applause for them, for your effort.